Good afternoon. Another Sunday afternoon, and as Richard will say, if it's Sunday,
Sunday Scoops time.
yeah, man. Welcome one and all. Today we have a special guest for you, and an extra special to him. So special him come about 100 times already. Where's Sir Richie?
What do you mean him come about 100 times? Oh, you mean him been on the program?
Expect that thing from me, not from you, brother.
You went to a school that the bishop founded the school. Let us introduce the erstwhile, Mr. Mikey Bennett. Mikey Bennett, how you do?
Not too bad. Sound like I have some
You
big
know,
man
so
coming.
around my mouth. I guess what? Because I not hear nothing because I not have in my ears piece. So I can put in my ears piece. And we're up and running.
Yeah, man. Baby
Mr.
yourself,
Big
Joe.
G, over to
All
you,
right.
sir.
Well, today we're going to be talking about not only the passing of super engineer Sylvan Morris, but we're also going to discuss the state of affairs where the foundation of the music is concerned. On the song. That's
Yeah,
what
you know, so
on the song.
so bad at that. No, but seriously speaking, you know, it's interesting, and Mikey and ourselves at different points in time, we have basically fielded conversations along these lines where there are individuals who, you know, where the music has come to a particular point, and there are a lot of people who have been involved with laying that foundation.
Monumental contributions.
Absolutely, but others who, you know, just happen into the thing in more recent period, and because they have the right connections, they basically reap those benefits. And you know, maybe it's something as a set of people involved in the business, something to really look at and see how we can steer in the right direction.
And even though we're focusing on Jamaican music, it's a thing that is endemic with music overall, where the focus is primarily placed on the artist themselves or just the label. And enough songs aren't being sung about the behind the scenes people, like the A&R people and the musicians and the engineers and mixers and masters, the people who do, bring that product to its final consumption state.
But think about it. Remember, we did a couple of weeks ago, we were looking at the phenomena of dub. And essentially, where dub come from? Is the engineer generally generated that genre?
Using the studio board as an instrument.
Absolutely. But again, we pay more attention. The spotlight is shone on the artists themselves, or
And
musicians, and the
product.
final product, and the marketing that is associated with it. And then there are dozens, hundreds of people behind the scenes who make the thing possible, and nothing is said of them. They just disappear like smoke. Eh?
Well, at least you can't say smoke.
Why sometimes, but them say life is not fear in it. Things happen, and
Jackass of the world are level.
yeah, but one of what we're gonna try to do is at least amplify the this issue, and in the process we wanna just use the opportunity to shine some light on the contribution of Sylvan Morris, a man who has been involved in the music from as far back as the mid to late 1960s, and was still involved up to 1990s. So we're looking at what we're talking about. If my arithmetic good, is about 25 or 30 years. And the big man upstairs call him up a Zion, and him just gone. And with the exception of one or two people who may have heard about him, here's a man who has touched the work of a whole slew of artists. Has been involved with multiple studios across particularly in Kingston, where all of the big music them come from. Harry J, for example.
Dynamic Sound.
Which of a studio? Dynamic Sound, Studio One, you name it.
Yeah, man. Channel
But-
1 too.
But fall by the wayside. And so here's our opportunity. Big G.
Actually, you mean over to
Mr. Mikey Bennett. my bad. Mr. Bennett, sir. Good
Yeah,
morning.
man.
And welcome to Sunday Scoops again.
Yeah, and this one kind of really special for me because the first time I went into a studio, Sylvan was the engineer, and I was amazed. First of all, that that him could master the mixing board, which was the most confusing piece of gadget I'd ever seen in my life. But was caught up in the music.
Yes.
And I was also fascinated that he never seemed satisfied by what was coming out. There was this always touching a knob, always tweaking, always, going back into readjusting the microphones. Cause I guess he had something in his head that as a youngster like me coming to the studio, everything sounded perfect. But then you realize with each touch, everything, perfect.
It's so perfect.
Was improved, and him still wasn't happy with how it sounded, and he was wondering what's the problem with this man. And so I really want to celebrate his life in this, and then the other thing is that the amount of other engineers that he influenced and that he trained, as a mentor and as a coach, albeit unofficial, and lament on behalf of Jamaica and all of the young people now, in the country who would like to take up engineering as a profession, that he wasn't allowed, or what he brought to the table didn't become part of a curriculum, the program to teach, to pass on this information. And so in other words, would be able to not only acknowledge the sound of Jamaica, but chronicle it and set aside. So in other words, we had a basis for it, codify it, and teach it, pass it on, and for improvement. And as we move from the analog age into the digital age, he would have been the kind of information that he had would have been so crucial to all of the young people who got into the music through the technology,
right,
but lacked the basic thing about EQ, sound, sound shaping, frequencies, things that him just took for granted, and how to make something sound better than that first sound that came out of the speakers.
Why?
So I'm looking forward to this evening program to just big him up and just kind of see if we can light a little fire, or set a little spark towards righting that wrong there.
Yeah,
I can't say that wrong.
I am with you on that, Mikey. I think it is we have that charge, and sometimes some of these things happen, but it provides an opportunity again for stuff that we have been engaged in over the last couple of years, and I think it is up to us to seize the moment, if you will.
And no better way to seize the moment than starting off with a 1967 tune. Yes, called
Baba Boom.
Boom.
Who did that song?
The Jamaicans.
The Jamaicans, right.
Yes, 1967.
With Tommy Collins was in that group as well.
Yeah.
Right. 1967. I come in like yesterday. I remember that. I remember that song when it broke. I was at primary school. That festival just getting at the thing, because I think that would have been the third year. Festival was 65, 66, third year of festival. It was the music kind of just take you to a little happy place, if you will, and this Jamaican song was it. And as I said, this is a man who worked on this song.
It could have been in the second one, because before that, that's had this was because Bam Bam was
Bam Bam was 66. They're right,
so
and that was the first one, right?
Yeah.
So, again, the cusp of the history of this festival contest. This is a song that was a winner, but for this dialogue that we're having, the Sylvan Morris's input contribution would remain in cobwebs, eh?
Yeah, and to contextualize the whole thing a little more, the only probably difference why he was not accredited as the producer was that he didn't put up the money. But
Everything
in
on
those
him.
days, recording was such a unfamiliar thing to the majority of even musicians. When you went into the studio, you were at the total mercy or being guided by the engineer, the person in there with the most experience. In other words, even if you're a group that was, had your harmonies together, you went into the studio and there was one mic or two mics, and that was the person who told you whether it was balanced or not balanced. That was the person who decided how it sounded in your headphone. That was the person who guided you. Because most of the time, the average producer didn't know much about being in the studio. What he knew about was how to sell records. So he was a person who could deal with the final product. But even him, when he came in that studio, he was at the mercy. The majority of producers were at the mercy
of the engineer.
and yeah, and if you realize a lot of the producers of the past were businessmen, so they were focused on the final product and how to get it out and how to sell it and how to thing. And so they didn't most of them didn't bring up musical or in some cases some of them brought a some technology to the whole thing. But when you think about how we credit the Coxsons and the Duke Reeds and all the other people, the
Beverly's
Randys and
record.
stuff, it was a lot because they were, and like the master owner in music business is the person who paid for the session. That's the person who owned the master. And by extension, the producer a lot of times is the person who has the final say and who pays, who finances the thing. In the Coxon thing, Coxon employed arrangers. Some would have the scatter or or the
Leroy Sibbles or Jackie
yeah,
Mitchell
yeah, or the Jackie Matus, the people, the musicians, real trained musicians. So I'm at the benefit of that. But he's the one kind of because he had the sound system, had a reference, him kind of knew what would sell. So he had the idea and that, and based on the record shop activity, the Sylvan Mercies of this world were the ones who, compared to now, with very little tech, although it seemed to, when I went in there, it just looked like a maze of this heights rocket ship. When we compare to what we have now, it was very, very basic technology.
Yeah.
Very, very basic.
But
they maximized, and them up to some points, them did things with equipment that the producers or the people who made these equipment had no idea. I know for a fact that this particular company came to Jamaica to find out how Errol Thompson from Joe Gibbs had got certain effects from, because it was not designed that way. But because Errol had been into technology, the minute them got a piece of equipment, them open it up and switch to card and try. And our music has benefited from it.
Innovation is called, and see, that is the definition.
Exactly.
That is the definition of creativity, pushing the limit of a particular situation. And to think too that Sylvan started out just repairing equipment. That was his primary purpose for you getting into the studio.
Repair
equipment.
Jammies and Tubbies. Yeah, I say in other words, they brought that to the thing. But and that's, like I say, as a songwriter, and I was quite happy to just to be acknowledged, but not be a star. That was this whole thing about the various players the thing getting started. Probably didn't start until with Babyface them and thing, or no, start with Quincy Jones, as an arranger or producer becoming a star, and it's because the Michael Jackson light was so bright that it could illuminate everybody who touched that situation.
Yeah.
And then the puff daddies of this world start to see the benefit of being physical, being vocal, being being a figure. And so it took on, the whole industry took on a whole new thing. But a lot of us in the industry were prepared to play the role of being in the background, because for one, you didn't have to dress up every day, and you have much less responsibility. You saw the pressure that the stars got under. Although them got most of the hype and thing, but they're under this constant pressure to look good and to dress up and be this person.
Under the microscope.
You could have your slippers, go to studio and do your thing and just be comfortable. As long as is when we realize that there was financial rewards to be passed on based on, international practices and things, people start to say, wait, how come, and then some people started to come to correct the wrongs. And so, I mean, a lot of us would gladly give up any kind of notoriety to get the right amount of royalty payment or what was due to all of the people. And all of the people involved in every production, there is a little space night for them to be rewarded. You know what I mean?
That's an interesting point because I guess what it just further amplified that music started out as a cottage industry thing. One
Pretty
or
much,
two
yeah.
man, as you said, Mikey, the producer was the one with the money. So he booked the studio time and him, put all of the funds behind it. The artist come in, he don't really know. Him just knows that the man will do a tune and he want him to do a good tune. But in terms of, I guess over time, they learned to identify what is good, what they wanted, or
No, it's true.
to be able
Like
to determine what they were getting.
Like everything else. I mean, if when you're introduced to a new sport, then like I'm a basketball fan, and the first time I was introduced to basketball, I really couldn't tell the difference between a good player and a great player. I mean, if the person wasn't scoring, a person was playing defense. I didn't get it. But the more you got into it, and first, if you ever played yourself, you realize, first of all, how fit the man, the gentleman has to be. So you're talking here, people talk about athletics. And so as an onlooker, all you wanted to interest in the score. Who was the best shooter? Who scored the most ball? As opposed to the assist was neither here nor there. Or the defense.
On defense, yeah.
No, so people into sports, I mean, when you hear people bigging up certain, footballers, defenders, and linkmen, the average woman in Jamaica, that don't make a difference to them. Them just want to know who scored the goal. Who scored the goal. But it's the same thing with the music business. And the music is kind of designed that way to focus the attention on that individual card. That
artist.
Individual heightens the chances of selling this product. And this product is meant to sell some other product. So is this this ecosystem, within this ecosystem, people have very vocal roles, but some people have very silent, powerful roles. Even take what we're doing here. We grew up just assuming announcers were so and so. So I don't think they were really highly paid. I mean, when you hear now how some talk show host in America making how much million, I ain't saying what. But then you realize that, listen, a match is hour and a half. But the talk shows surrounding that match last for all 30 hours,
Yeah,
So it's advertisers get a chance.
Residual.
No, this is not even residual. You think about you think about one of the major things coming up. And one week of promotion and because I'm selling, in other words, the media house is selling products.
You are correct. Last year, the World Championships, I remember the arguments were, in fact, they put an ad out with Shelly, Sherika, Elaine, and a little white girl named Gabby, the one from Kentucky, right? Now, on a year full of Sunday, that girl no belong on the same track with any of the three women, right? But in the United States, where there's a desire to reclaim the sprinting ground, that white girl sold, right?
Yeah, man.
And so for weeks, that was the conversation.
And then even look at in tennis.
And then she lost. They beat her so bad, I don't think she come in at the frame.
But the same thing happened with Serena and Sharapova.
Right.
And Sharapova got so much more endorsements over Serena, who has won 20 odd major titles.
But so that we don't lose the focus. The point, though, as Mikey said, the role that the people behind the scenes play. As I say, an announcer, a good sportscaster, a good sports broadcast journalist can keep that story alive for weeks.
Oh God, yes,
right?
man, yeah, man.
And that's what things. So if we don't have an idea of the value of the material that you're putting out there, what we're doing here is you see the value of it a couple of years down the road, because one thing is becoming clear: we have not been taking ownership of the historical component of our music business. God.
So, Sylvan was at Studio One for a better part of about 7 years. That's what the scribes say. And in that point in time, there's a ton of tune that came out at Studio One. And, at the time, Jackie Mittoo was there, talking about Delroy Wilson, Bob Andy, Dennis Brown, the Cables, Heptones, Larry Marshall, Abyssinian. So just going to give you some quick rundown of some of the songs which may have, well, not may have, they came across the mixing board, but is not in every single one of these. But in that time, he would have been the primary person in the studio, even though there were other engineers there. People probably took turns at engineering, but he was the primary engineer. So let's kick off with a Heptone song, 1968. Somebody run us, so I try to sing harmony.
Why? No, Gladiators, that's a nice good group. Mike, you remember that group there? Gladiators.
Yeah,
Roots, not your roots, is a kind of a Rastaman anthem,
Yeah, but
and this is right in the middle of the 70s when Rastafarianism was really the order of the day.
The thing that strikes me though is, again, just listening to the sound, how he brings the thing together, right? Because them days at 60s, a 2-track studio, no that, right? Two track?
At most.
and so to be able to bring all of this, because I only for different activity in terms of, the different moving parts. I think the Gladiators was a 3 or 4, 3 of them in the group, or 4 of them in the group.
And not only that, Richie, it's, I was reading one of his interviews and he talked about miking a drum. And I'm saying that, listen, you just place the microphones, it's the best possible option. And I like now when man have a mic for each drum, you just have to place the microphone at the best points to catch a broad cross section of what was happening on the drum. And even bass lines, so sometimes you have the bassist come in and then play a line of bass, and then what they would do is play it backwards. It sounds kind of familiar, but it was being played, and then play the tape in reverse. Mm-hmm. So the singer get a different feel. Those are little tricks, and find say the bass coming from the back of the speaker was heavier than the bass coming from the front of the speaker. Yeah. So they put a microphone at the back of the speaker to capture that bass. All of these little things, again, comes back to innovation and creativity.
And this is not a
it was also about trying to recreate that thing that you heard in your head. The great engineers have really good ears and really good imagination, and they know what a pure sound is. I mean, on a particular frequency. But if we just kind of reflect on the selection that G played a while ago, and I don't know if he did it purposely, but it's as if for each of the songs you could hear that there was more added to the studio. So it moved from the 2-track to the probably the 8-track, and it moved from mono to stereo. So these are things that engineers are hearing, because I mean they would listen to the records in America and realize that there was a big difference in terms of the quality. And those who got a chance to travel, went and saw what was taking place. But those who didn't get a chance to travel, just stay there and daydream. How can I get my drum to sound like that Motown drum? And somebody would say, boy, so when the boss going up, he said, listen, we need a new mic, we need a new set of microphone. So when multi-track recording start, the various studios were put under pressure by the engineers. Listen, we need to get better equipment. We need that delay.
I can relate to the Mikey. I can relate, because being in the graphics industry, I remember the times I used to tell me somebody, I used to work at Sonata, and I said, boss, we need some better computers, because after about 4 years, them things has slowed down. But it's not that the computer's slowing, the computer behaving the same way as the first year you bought it, but you have again with the brain, you adapt and you've caught up, you know.
I mean, we think about Microsoft, we think about Steve Jobs, and we think about Apple. But they will be probably the first to tell you that them had some little guys who insomniacs who don't sleep. Who every day comes and say, listen, we could tweak this now, we could make that better,
Yeah.
because we're so focused on technology.
Productivity and throughput.
The Sylvan Morrisons of this world were these people who heard something and
they go never rest until them hear it in the record.
And then because, I mean, in Jamaica, there was so much more foreign music played than local music. So there was constant reference. How can I get my snare to sound like that? How to get, and then you notice in a lot of the Studio One recordings, the genius of that era was that because although they were everything had to go down at the same time, but the voice, they cut out this little frequency for the voice that was almost sacred. And that is great engineering. Let me tell you, that is great engineering to have all of these things taking place, these hand sections and these things going, but the vocals are right up front in the middle. And so, in other words, it was really the magic of the engineers.
This is what I call a pyramid, one of the great pyramids of Egypt. It's a masterpiece.
No, it don't really work. I mean, and the songs, although they're not perfect, stick in my mind. I mean, well, nostalgia is part of the whole thing why we love them Studio One songs, and because we love the songs. And sonically, they don't compare to some of the later songs. But it was the best at what was happening at the time. I mean, and we got, we got it found a place in our heart that is so special. So even when like Freddie them went back and was doing over some of the, them stealing them, do over some of the cocks and rhythm them, playing about the same thing, but it just for some reason it didn't sound the same way to a new generation.
It sounded artificial.
But to those of us who went and bought them records and used to play them, something was missing. And what was missing was probably the lo-fi. But what I'm saying is that him did the best that him could with what him had, I mean. And was hope, and every time exposed to better and better equipment.
You know what it says? Yeah. What it says for me though, Mikey, is we don't give the credit, and Jamaicans generally, we're probably some of the hardest taskmasters, but we made do with what we had, right? And so these guys, them in the recording business, and Sylvan Morris is the engineer. Theme job is to try and turn out the best sound he can get on the record, right? And there are others like him. Scratch, similar kind of personality. So, well, in terms of the role, personality is like a bit different.
Scratch.
But no, it's true. But think about it now. So if you're a medical doctor in Jamaica and you're operating at the top of your game, and there's a new innovation in certain kind of thing, the university or one of the things with the medicals would offer, you could have got to a
course.
A course looking at the new technology. So the Sylvan Morris now is unfortunate that he never had a place that he could have go in a Jamaica.
There you go. That's it. That's my point.
And said this. And that said, listen, here are some new technologies that we think would.
Jagad and bless, walk good, and catch you next week for another episode of Sunday Scoops. And remember, on a Tuesday evening, yours truly on Songs from My Youth, and on Wednesday and Saturday, Richard from 7 to 9 with the Jamaica Mix. A little bit of current events and some sweet reggae music.
Respect.
Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. One love.
Hi there. If you enjoyed that clip, go on over to our website at yardmedia.com where you can watch the entire broadcast at your leisure. And while you're there, why don't you check out our other reggae music features? And before you leave, pick up some of our Jamaican reggae merchandise, and hey, don't forget to tell your friends.